The Daniel Defense DD4 V7 SLW. All right, guys, so I'm a little late to the full-on review, but we got our hands on it. We've shot it already, and we had a blast with this. This is the brand new Daniel Defense V7 SLW, and we're gonna be breaking down the overall thoughts and opinions on this rifle, as well as the comparison to other Daniel Defense rifles like the RIS-2, the RIS-3, the older SLW, as well as the V7, because there's a lot of different models and rifles that Daniel Defense puts out, and each and every one of them have different characteristics. I will say, though, that I feel like the brand new line of the V7 and the SLW pretty much takes the things that were missing from those previous models and puts it all together in a very solid package. Out the gate though, shooting this thing, extremely accurate, as well as lightweight, durable, and a very nice soft shooter as well. Because I was expecting it to be a little bit more harsh, the fact that it is a lighter rifle compared to like the RIS-2 or the RIS-3. At the same time, yes, it's just typical 5.56, but with that lightweight that comes with the handguard in the barrel, I definitely did not feel a difference compared to other rifles that I've shot of recently. So it seems like it has a good mitigation of recoil overall. The gun ships as standard out of the standard Daniel Defense box, as well as magazine. Everything for the most part comes as any other Daniel Defense rifle out there, which is always, for the most part, solid. But this is my first time ever utilizing their handguard here, this one in particular, compared to other ones like I've used on my Mark 18, which is the quad rail, the RIS-2, which is also a quad rail, and then of course the RIS-3, which is very similar to this style rail, but bigger and bulkier and more rigid. This rail system is called the MFR rail system, and this particular length of this is a 13.5. So let's break down some of those differences real quick and tell you, so you can get an understanding at least what this is compared to the older V7 and as well as the V7 SLW, and whether or not this is something that you might want to look into. So the V7, the standard V7, released back in 2023, and it featured a 16-inch CHF government profile barrel. They then dropped the V7 SLW, which was the older model of this one, the DD4 V7 SLW, which was a 14.5 pinned and welded lightweight profile barrel. This is, however, the newer model of that model, which features a 14.5 CHF lightweight barrel pinned and welded with a dead air muzzle device. So they went from the typical A2 birdcage to a pin and welded dead air muzzle device, so it can utilize any dead air suppressor or suppressor mounts, which their mounts are hub compatible, so you can really run any suppressor out the gate and you don't have to go through the troubles of getting the previous one removed, put on. That's a whole process within itself. Out the gate, you can run this suppressed. And it's 14.5, but it's pinned and welded to 16 inches. One of the biggest differences is the actual rail itself. Now, the older version, as I stated before, was a 16-inch barrel, so it had a longer rail, which was 15 inches. Now, the older V7 SLW was 13.5 as well, but it had a extension or contoured end of the barrel, which made it very hard to actually run it suppressed. Daniel Defense has since then cut that straight like a line to where now you can run it suppressed and not have those type of issues. Definitely a big plus there. Now, one of the biggest though upgrades that they went with was the actual Ambi lower. And that's been one of the biggest things, in my opinion, that kind of took people away from probably going with the SLW over something like the RIS-3. The RIS-2 was not Ambi, but the RIS-3 was Ambi on the lower. However, the V7 SLW was not Ambi as well. So when somebody was comparing the V7 SLW to the RIS-3, the RIS-3 kind of always somewhat had people go that route for the full Ambi controls if there was somebody that was, you know, heavy on being an Ambi gun. With that said, that's no longer the case. You got Ambi safety, you got Ambi bolt release, and you got also the Ambi charging handle that pretty much comes standard at this point, but you're just fully ambied out. Another upgrade on this rifle is the actual trigger itself. It's an enhanced 3-piece trigger compared to the previous models being just standard mil-spec. It has an advanced coating for a smoother pull, and you can definitely feel it somewhat within the overall of this gun. It just the wall and everything else does not seem as crisp, but more as smooth. And it just feels good with each and every trigger pull. I actually like it a lot. I'm not gonna lie though, it's not that big of a difference, but it is worth noting. Now, with that said, there are these differences and these additions that are added on. So how is the weight overall? The 16-inch was 6.2 pounds. The older SLW was 6 pounds. This one is coming in at 6 pounds and 2 ounces as well. So only a 0.2 ounce add-on. And you could probably say that's due to the Ambi controls. It has to be something very light at that point. The length overall stays the same for the most part, which is 31.5 to 34.75, depending on, you know, pretty much how you plan to run the stock. And one of the biggest things that I stated earlier is just the suppressor compatibility. The older models were definitely harder to do that because of the way the handguard was done. Now that it's not, you have a Xeno flash hider, which allows you to run a dead air hub mount, which is hub compatible, which then allows you to pretty much put it on any suppressor out there of your choosing. One of the biggest things though about this rifle in particular, as I stated before, is just it's extremely lightweight. It just feels like nothing, right? I could just flip it around, but I'm not because I'm in my room. But it feels extremely light compared to a lot of different rifles that I have out there. I mean, I have some 10.5 rifles that feel heavier than this guy right here. It's extremely light and it's extremely durable. It does not take or sacrifice the durability with coming in with the lightness. You know, at the end of the day, if this is something that you plan on trucking around for a very, very long time, or you're planning to get something that you can truck around with for a very long time, and I'm just talking about walking around with, this is definitely a go-to rifle, and it's built by a big brand like Daniel Defense. You know, the Riz 3 is going to be extremely more duty heavy, just durable, capable, but I still feel like this one is just as good when it comes to that part. Now, it's just up to you on what you want. Do you want something more lightweight that you can move around with, you can get around with, that can still be as durable, or do you just want the bulk? You want that just war ready? I feel like both of these are capable in a very serious situation, but people have the right to decide on what they want to do and what they want to utilize it with, and I can understand for both parts. But that said, this one, a very solid one out the gate. The handguard being slimmer also just gives you better overall control of the rifle. The lightweight profile barrel, even though it's lightweight, still handles the recoil fairly well. I don't really have an issue with this one whatsoever. Oh yeah, and then last but not least, this is a mid-length gas system. So it's not a carbine, it's a mid-length. It being 14.5. Mid-length is always going to be a even more shooter-friendly, just overall, instead of your carbine or pistol gas tube length rifles or pistols. So keep that in mind. Extremely, extremely nice and smooth shooter. You got a QD spot that you can run here, or you can move it over here. You got your QDs also on your stock and on the back of the stock as well. So you got a lot going on. And you also just got that M-lock that just pretty much wraps around at every single degree that you need to add whatever attachments you need to attach. So out the gate, very, very solid. And maybe if you want, guys, we do a follow-up and compare this more so with the Riz 3. I like this one a lot. I want to compare it with the Riz 3. I feel like the Riz 3 is battle proven, battle ready. I think this is the same thing as well. But I don't know. You know, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions on why you would choose this over that, or why you would choose the Riz 3 over that. Like, I would just love to hear it sound off down below in the comment section. This gun, though, very solid, and we'll follow up when we get some more rounds down on this one down the pipeline. And yeah, guys, a lot of y'all was asking about this little gap that was right here, right? This little gap that you got going on. Now, I reached out to Daniel Defense about that. I said, hey guys, I have this little gap on my handguard. What is that about? Is that an issue? Do I need to send it in? And I heard that this is not an issue whatsoever. It's a little peep, but it's pretty standard. It's just the way that the actual handguard is timed up to the receiver itself. But there was no issue. There was no gas leakage or anything of that matter when doing so. But it was something worth me actually just asking them about. When you actually look close up though, you can literally see this is where the portion of the handguard meeting with the upper receiver, and everything is bolted down as tight as possible. So there's just nothing going on there. That might bother some people, and I can understand that. But when I tried it myself to even tighten it down even more, the bolts were already pretty much put in place to its max. So I wasn't able to even get it any more tighter. And when I shot it, I paid attention to that portion to make sure to see if there was anything leaking or anything coming out, and that wasn't the case. But yeah, guys, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all as always, and I'm gonna see y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace.